We're back with our Set Chat Pat Crack video series. This is our last scheduled video for the time being. Tom has asked me to start off by saying, please watch until the end, because there will be a special treat. And I don't really know what's going on for this video, so I'll turn it over to the experts who do.
So I thought for this one, what could be fun is we've each been brought on as experts in a particular area. So Johannes has been our gameplay expert, Dan has been our collection expert, and I have been the market expert. So of course, we've always focused on in each video the cards that we want to see coming out of a pack. Now, there's the obvious thing you could do with cards that you don't like, but that's not really that fun. So what I thought would be a good idea would be for each of us to pick a card from each of the expansion packs that we opened in this series, which we dearly love, even though it's not for the reasons we were brought on to talk about it. So for me, for example, as the market expert, I'm going to introduce a card that I love, even though it has almost zero market value. But there's a reason that I still love to see it, even though it wouldn't make anyone any money. Dan, what about you?
So I will be picking a common card that I will probably at some point in time have had 200 or 300 copies of, but really it has no real collectability. It is almost universally available and doesn't have any particular interest from that perspective. And I deliberately avoided cards that had known Easter eggs for the same reason. And Johannes?
In my case, I try to pick cards that are either not very playable or cards that I really, really like. And I've always wanted to pull off, but failed every time I tried. And I tried to do it mostly for rare cards. Didn't work in all cases, but mostly rares.
Awesome. So taking our inspiration from NPR and Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, this is the Not Our Job segment of Pack Crack and Set Chat.
All right, we're going to start at the beginning with Premiere. And my pick of completely worthless from Premiere, but that I still love dearly, is Simon Tarses. There were several friends of mine who collected this game with me back in the day. And although distributions are somewhat random, it seems like that no matter how many packs we opened, they always had a Simon Tarses inside of them. And it kind of became a running joke. And even over the years, one of my friends who collected with me when he got married, inside his wedding card, I put 27 copies of the Whiteboarder 94 Simon Tarses card inside of it. And for his 40th birthday recently, I even commissioned the actor who played Simon Tarses to record a brief video for my friend, congratulating him on his genuine love for Simon Tarses in card form.
That's fantastic. Mine is not quite as in-depth of a story, but similar. Mine is Jera, the Romulan semi-hologram. It is the only card where Patricia Tallman, who did stunts for so many of the cast, actually gets a full face shot. And I've always appreciated Pat Tallman's work, both as a stunt person for Star Trek and in Babylon 5. So it's always just that little bit of, this is a main crew from somewhere else that I really like.
She also gets a line, I believe, in The Search, Part 1. She's like, the cloaking device is functioning within normal parameters.
Yep, and then shortly after that gets blown up.
Yep, in true stunt woman style. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. She also is one of the cast of pirates trying to steal trilithium resin in Baryon buildup. So she actually has a number of lines there, and I believe that's the only appearance that she gets credited for officially. But I don't recall that for sure.
I picked a rare interrupt, and I went for Alien Groupie. Gameplay-wise, this is not a super useful card. When your opponent has done good stuff for them, as in complete a mission, one male personnel has to stay down on the planet for another turn. So there are much more powerful interrupts that either stop the entire ship, like Rogue Borg mercenaries or loss of orbital stability. So really, even within that first set power-wise, it's not very good. But I've always loved the story. I was imagining it like the Enterprise is on tour like a rock band, and the singer doesn't make it until to the bus in time. So I've always wanted to play it, but it's out. Several other cards outshine it by light years.
All right, moving on to AU. For me, it's one we've mentioned 100 times. It's Lieutenant Junior Grade Picard. Basically, because he's me. At least he would be the best me I could hope to be in the 24th century. Like, he has the job I want. I'm an astrophysicist by trade. He is the astrophysicist on the flagship of the Enterprise. And he has the same skill set probably as I would claim. So science, astrophysics, maybe I'd put computer skill in instead of navigation. But what does Picard have to say about the job that I would, unbelievably want? He says, I would rather die as the man I was than live the life I just saw. So thank you, Captain Picard, for thinking that the best I could ever hope for would be the worst thing you could possibly imagine. So it's definitely him for me.
Fantastic. I apologize in advance for botching a pronunciation, but my favorite card from AU that is a common is Hama Hama Unka Unka Uapua. The computer program fish in the Enterprise school that does the guided learning. I absolutely love that they took the native name for the fish and named both the program and the card that. And it makes me giggle every time. And it is frequently one of those things that I will hand to people and say, yeah, if you can pronounce this, you're good.
That's a great pick. That's a great pick.
So I went for another interrupt this time, and I went for C's Wesley. It has a great image where Wesley is just beginning to be tortured in that one weird video game episode. And you can never really pull it off fully, because to have the full effect, your opponent has to have Wesley Crusher in play. And over the years, there have been a lot of attempts at building decks that try to kill Wesley Crusher, either your opponent's or your own, as often as possible, or in this case, capture him. So I've never been lucky enough to actually play against somebody who had a Wesley that I could start torturing.
I'm going to jump in here. Maybe make it a little more interesting for our viewers. So as you've been talking, I've been looking at the cards that we open, which I have here in this binder. And right now our count is one. We have one card that you mentioned that we opened was Lieutenant J.G. Picard. So I want to do a little over-under. I think the over-under is going to be 5 for our viewers. If the number of cards that you all don't want to see is more, if we open 5 or more, though, or more than 5 or under 5, I'm going to go under 5, but I think it's going to be close. So I'm going to keep a count of the cards that we've opened that you mentioned.
I'll go with more.
All right, from Q, another one I've mentioned before, it would have to be Barber Pole, simply for its connection across multiple expansions in the game, yet its completely random introduction and the continuity from having Mott the Barber in the Premier set. I've never done anything with it, but it just makes me smile every time I crack a Q pack, and there it is waiting for me. So that's my choice for Q.
Back when I played, I would occasionally throw that in to be my last seed card just for the fun of it. But no, it's definitely really high on my list. But I have to take Tijuana Crass just slightly above that. As both a trumpet player, a fan of the Tijuana Brass, and a major punster, all that combines like half of the cue cards. Okay, almost all of the cue cards are bad puns. And so they're all that same level of really bad, almost funny.
Excellent. Johannes?
I went for the Terraforming Station simply because it's a terrible card in a tournament format. In a tournament, you'll never get to play against the same player twice. And who is there to verify that you have actually agreed on that the next time you play them? So it's a card that simply doesn't work in a tournament setting. I imagine it's very nice for casual kitchen table games against the same people all the time, but it doesn't lend itself very well to tournament play.
Gotcha.
Ridiculous and entertaining. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How it should be. How it should be. For First Contact, I went with 9 of 11, who is the assimilated Cardassian, because that's a moment in time thing. So as we're seeing the Borg in First Contact, We've only ever seen them before in TNG, and they've just basically been assimilated humans or humanoids, no other races that I recall seeing in the TNG Borg episodes. But in First Contact, we see an assimilated Klingon, but also later on, just for a brief fraction of a second, we see an assimilated Cardassian. So it's a sort of lore expanding, universe changing thing that you'll blink and you'll miss it in the film. But with a static card, it's like, oh yeah, no, that's the thing. And you can almost sort of headcanon a little story about an encounter between a Gala-class starship and a Borg ship, and how this poor chap ended up where he did. So that's why I always love seeing 9 of 11.
It's particularly interesting because he either had to have been crew on the Enterprise or been one of the half dozen Borg that got beamed over with the Queen as the cube or as the sphere is being destroyed.
But this is the good thing, right? It could be, it's space, right? It could be maybe another Cardassian ship encountered the Caretaker's array, maybe, a wormhole, anything, some other encounter that we don't know about happened in the world. And that's why I just love it. It could be any number of things. So that's great.
That's awesome. I actually took Shot in the Back. It definitely was an amusing moment. It was definitely Data and Brent playing for comedy at a moment that was an interesting touch into post-war trauma, but it was a lot of fun just to see, and it's a fun little image of Data getting shot a whole bunch of times in the back, and it amuses me every time it runs by.
Yeah, when he sort of stiffens up.
Yep.
Even though that's a very human reaction. You think your machine might move to protect. It's like, oh no, but he's got the emotion chip, so it's reasonable to assume that could be a cause.
It's very interesting because I picked the antique machine gun, actually. Simply because it's an artifact, and while it does have a cool effect and a very powerful one in the right situation, there's usually a better artifact that you can do either to do the same strategy or an even better strategy. So in the next couple of sets, you'll see more artifacts from me.
Like Croden's Key, that's one of those ones that sits around in the box for quite some time. It's not in demand.
Maybe.
For DS9, there's a pronunciation here I might get wrong, but it's the Salthana Clock, the artifact, which is a rare, so technically has some value, but like these other artifacts, doesn't tend to sell that fast. But even though the episode it comes from is a pretty bad episode, at least for me, in that series, I love that he built it and it remains in his office for all of the other seasons of the show. So it's just a lovely little bit of continuity. And if I could have, an on-screen Star Trek artifact, I might well choose that clock just to have ticking away in my office. So it's not one I ever really want to encounter in a big lot of DS9 cards, but it's one that always makes me smile.
Absolutely. Again, going with commons, now that you guys are picking fun rares, I would probably take the Vole infestation. I can only imagine the prop guy going, I have to make a what? A Cardassian Vole. Okay. And making that rubber 6-legged cat-sized, rodent was just, and the way that each of the characters that ends up carrying it around during the course of the episode are carrying it, it's just hilarious to me.
It's also another running continuity thing. They have future references to Vole infestations. I can't remember, but I always thought a great missed opportunity. They should have had like a little Cardassian spoon shape on the Vole's forehead because it's a Cardassian Vole. I thought that would have been great.
I went for another thing we see in Sisko's office. I went for the baseball. It's a card, an interrupt that can be worth 20 points, but it's very, very situational. You have to take over a facility that an opponent brought to the game or a facility that you have already lost at some point during the game. So I love that moment in the show where Ducat sees the baseball and recognizes its meaning, but it's something that I was never able to pull off in a game.
Awesome. Yeah.
That one does sell just because it's a DS9 rare, but yeah, it's never in high demand, even that set.
If Avery hit the convention circuit again, that would probably start selling a lot better too.
From Dominion, this one's kind of like my version of you picking Patricia Tallman in a previous set. I went with Tarul, because here we have early Martha Hackett, appearance before her more iconic role on
Absolutely.
Voyager. So even though it would have been nice for her to have been, I would have loved to have her as a semi-recurring character on the Defiant. I thought it would be nice because, yes, we never really had a frequent Romulan character. I almost feel that was a missed opportunity. And I loved seeing her in that two-parter anyway. So that's why, even though she's not high value, I like seeing her whenever I open that pack.
I love it. Probably if I had uncommons on my list, she's really top. I love seeing her, and I enjoyed meeting her in London quite a few years ago. Mine is Caught Red-Handed. That scene where Worf is still trying to do his old job and picks up the bag that is Odo and disrupts the whole thing, is really key for Worf being able to let go of his past career and get into the reality of who he was becoming in DS9. And it's also just hilarious to me to see even Quark pissed off at Worf for disrupting a sting. So
one of my favorite DS9 moments of all time is when Odo has pre-prepared his list of Worf's failures as security chief. Not just that he looked them up, but that he has it on his desk ready to go. And it's,
yes.
You've never seen him happier as to when Worf gets into his trap. So that's a great one.
So I could have gone for the obvious Croden's Key, but I decided to take another artifact, and that is the Earring of Linallas. Something that I actually got to pull off once, but not consistently enough to actually do me any good. So I won one game with it, but lost all the rest, I think. It's, again, a card that has great story mode, but it's so dependent on first acquiring the artifact from one location and then getting to do the next location at the right time. It was a great piece in a deck I was very fond of, but it's not something that can be relied on.
Seemed to be a theme, especially when you did your pick of worst rares that we could get. It was always the cards that list a very specific thing and don't have a generic use.
Exactly.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense.
And they're frequently some of my favorites because they're so story dependent. And they're generally affordable because the players don't really want 17 copies of them. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From Blaze of Glory, I've gone with the card Commandeer Ship because it is from the Star Trek, VHS. Is it a Klingon Challenge? I believe is the subtext. I loved that game in all of its flaws, and just to have it introduced. Obviously, we have Kavok has value, so I couldn't pick him. So I picked a card with that property IP, but that still represents how great it was to see those kind of tie-ins.
Yeah, I love that one. That's awesome. So tactics in general are one of those things that as a collector, there are some that are valuable, but most of them are kind of like, okay, this is the throwaway common from Blaze of Glory. I really like them in general. They're beautiful cards. It's the same thing that Michael has where he just loves beautiful ship shots. And I decided to specifically go with Primary Energy Weapon because I wasn't sure if they intentionally made the acronym PEW or not.
That's good. That's good.
But I had to pick between a dozen or so commons.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of duds you could pick, but the potential clarity does make it better.
I'm so disappointed. We were so close, Dan. We opened 3 tactics. I don't know if they're common or uncommon from Blaze of Glory. We missed the one that you like.
Yep.
I guarantee you they're common.
So I went for another artifact. Would you believe it? A card I would love to work, the Sword of Kalas. Yes, it's a great card in 2nd edition where you can get it into play consistently. In 1st edition, it suffers from the same thing that so many artifacts do. Even if you get it in play, there might be a better one. I would love to have my Klingons run around with the Sword of Kalas and lots of other battles, but I could never pull it off in any meaningful way.
Yeah, great moment of lore, but as you say, if you can't make it work, that it just doesn't make the list.
Yep. And that one suffers too from there being a foil version of it in the same packs. And so I would pull that artifact and be disappointed when it otherwise would have been one of my favorite story cards because it's not the foil.
Yeah. We've got 2 cards. We pulled 2 cards you both like. Dan, we're still waiting for you to get a card, and hopefully we'll get over the 5.
For rules of acquisition, for me, it has to be Kukulaka. Again, a card that appears, a character, as it were, that appears multiple times. So in the early season 2 episode, I believe, and then later in the episode All in the Cards, when you actually get to meet him. My wife has a teddy bear called Kukulaka. For that reason, she's a huge DS9 fan, and it was too good not to pick. No one wants to buy the poor guy, but he's a sweetie, so he makes my list.
Absolutely. That one's definitely on my list for Chase to sign as well. I'm going to see if I can get both Chase and Alexander to sign that one. I think it'll be fun. For me, vacuum desiccated remains. How do you out Ferengi the Ferengi? You auction off body parts as you die, and you create an ability to market and collect body parts. It's just such a ridiculous and perfect concept, especially knowing that nowadays this is totally a viable concept, and it's not going to be long before somebody tries.
So for rules of acquisition, I picked the Breen CRM 114 because, as we said in the last video, it's a very situational card. I could have picked others, but that's really the one I really want to use. But it's just so hard to actually be in the situation where you need it, and there aren't so many reliable ways to get arms dealers out. So even though I'd love to use it to shoot at things, people either are better defended or intimidate me or simply have nothing to shoot at.
Really good episode, and a sort of interesting part of it. So great choice on that front. Okay, so trouble with tribbles, I've gone with Hero of the Empire. And it's because of the process by which this must have actually become a card, in that you have Arendarvin in that great Trials and Tribulations episode, coming back in DS9, and he's describing what his hope for killing Kirk is. And he says, I see my statue to be a tribble in one hand and Kirk's head in the other. And the team at Decipher created an image which never existed in the show, perfectly demonstrating Arendarvin's vision of his statue. So I had to go with that, because it was just, when I first saw it, I'm like, I don't remember seeing this screen capture. Oh, they must have made it. That's a big ask for something so obscure, but it works so well. So that's easily my top pick for that.
Absolutely. And I went with lineup for a similar, it's that total feat of production engineering that they managed to get Bashir and O'Brien into that lineup from the original shot. And it's just a masterpiece that really talks to the editing of that episode and just how much fun that episode really was.
So my trouble with triples pick is a Klingon card, Council of Warriors. What that does is you have to play it on a mission you haven't yet attempted, and then you have to complete it within 2 turns in order to get the bonus. And the bonus is juicy. You can get a lot of points if you shoot things out of the sky, as you will want to do. But I've never managed to find a deck that reliably gets to do the preparation or gets the mission done in those 2 turns. So it's thematically, I think it's a really nice card. You sit together, you plan, and then everything falls apart because of those meddling kids.
Perfect. A card that does not survive the enemy.
I remember you mentioning like Rogue Borg mercenaries being used as a stopping engine, even though you never intended to win with them. I could imagine if I had an opponent playing that card, it'd be more fun to prevent them from succeeding than it would be to actually win the game. So you would be drawn towards it inevitably. For reflections, I picked Investigate Shattered Space. Why did I pick that? Because obviously we all know that rare missions are the bane of Premiere, but it is a card, well, the foiling effect on the cluster of temporal anomalies really works in terms of making it a nice looking card from what is otherwise a fairly flat card in Premiere. So I think they did a great job with that. And that's why I like seeing that one.
I skipped Reflections because there are no common cards in Reflections. Everything has just a little bit of market value. I honestly, there's not a card in Reflections I'm disappointed to open these days. It's just a beautiful set. I love it.
And my pick for Reflections was the Curl Niskos, another artifact that is difficult to pull off. But I have to tell the story where we just last week played a tournament and one of my friends brought a Curl Niskos deck that he used to turn his Federation deck into non-aligned mode with memory wipe, and then use the Curl Niskos to attack everything with a tripled attribute chip. And while it worked in some games and he was shooting at outposts, in another game that he told me about, he had the same Curl Niskos experience that I always had, is it backfired on him. His opponent got to steal the artifact from a mission that he cleared out, and then he was the one on the run. And that's pretty much what happens when I try to build it. I either can't acquire it, or if I seed it under risky mission and steal it from my opponent, they are actually the one that get it.
One of those situational cards.
It was always hard to get that animal out.
You don't actually need the animal, right?
I can't remember.
I think it's actually these 7 original classifications, because
Okay.
I don't think there were any animals in the Premier set.
Oh, you're right.
Is the first animal from Faja? Oh no, we had the
No, Targ.
Klingon, the
The
Targ.
Targ, yeah.
Okay, and for Mirror Mirror, this is one that we mentioned in our Mirror Mirror video. This has to be, for me, self-sealing stem bolts. It's another one of those things that we talked about in previous sets, which is something I love, i.e. a small thing which crops up over multiple episodes. In that very same review, I think, Dan, you made the comment that you keep a certain amount of cards, but for this one, you kept a gross. And I didn't process that as you said it. So as I thought about it afterwards, oh my God, that's an excellent idea. It's like, you know, meta lore in effect to keep that. So I'm always happy to see self-sealing stem bolts.
And likewise, there's no way this is absolutely the card I keep from Mirror Mirror as well, for that same reason. It just makes me grin.
My pick for Mirror Mirror was Wayun of Borg. It's such a weird card that Decipher apparently made to have counterparts for the other affiliations as well. It looks impressive when you look at it. It has 3 icons on the left of the lore box, 3 icons on the right. It is crammed with good skills that Borg need, but it falls short in that Borg most of the time are more happy to have a different counterpart, because they are either looking at the Locutus to go for Earth, or Gowron of Borg that allows you to battle at will, which is great for Borg. So even though it's a great card, it's just that the competition in the counterpart slot is so fierce.
Yeah, I've got to assume that if I had to imagine the number of games played, like, you know, Klingon versus Federation, it's probably quite high. You know, things like that. I've got to imagine Borg versus Dominion is fairly low in the scene.
And we did open
Okay.
a self-sealing stem bolts. So our count is now 3, and all of you have mentioned the card, which was represented in the cards that we opened.
Excellent.
So does that count as 2 because we each picked it, or does that count as 1 because it's the same?
So 1 card.
Okay. From the Voyager expansion, I picked Stadi, who was the original navigator before Tom Paris takes over. And the reason for that is that just as Voyager was coming out, this is in the days of 14.4 modem dial-up internet, where I would spend hours downloading images from forums of Star Trek ships, or many, many hours downloading early wave file sound clips. And those were few and far between because of the size of the files and the time it took to transmit. But one of the files I had was her little description of Voyager, when she's describing number of decks, maximum crew complement, warp speed, etc. And of course, you know, because that was all I had, I played that over and over again just because there was a new series coming out and that was all I had of it to do. So that's why when I saw it on screen, it's like, yes, that's great. I'm glad I saw that. So that's why she made my list.
That's awesome. I think Voyager might have been a more interesting show if she had survived. So I went with temporal micro wormhole. I know it has some small amount of value and it definitely sees play. But for me, it's a great episode. It's another great Vaughn Armstrong moment. His opportunity to play just character after character that are distinct and have different personalities, even if they all have the same voice. So I always love seeing that one.
Agreed. No, it's just he's all his characters are different. You often forget he's the same actor, and it's a good sign. It's a good sign that you can buy into his heartfelt empathy for these people, as opposed to seeing him as I believe like Sescal in DS9 or something like that, when it's a totally different character.
Exactly.
And we opened that one. I mean, it was the all-star of Johannes's deck.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I have to say, from Voyager onwards, I had a very hard time picking cards that are terrible or cards that were so difficult to pull off. So I went for Voyager and also for the Borg for very similar cards. I went for Dilemmas, and for Voyager that is Subspace Fracture. It has a powerful effect. It can kill the entire crew or away team, but the requirements are still relatively easy. And the thing is, if you want to kill a full crew, that means you probably have to stop some people so they don't have the requirements. However, those stopped personnel are then no longer part of the entire crew. So it's a weird dilemma. You can kill an entire crew, but your chances are a lot higher if that entire crew, of course, is very, very small. And then the effect isn't as impactful as you would hope for.
This reminds me of my naivety in 1994, thinking that by stacking a bunch of archers under things, I'd wipe out entire away teams, but they were so easy to defeat that I never saw my dream come true. For the Borg, I went with 6 of 12, and this one will make sense during the editing of this video, so I'm assuming that he's going to appear on the screen. And the reason I picked him is because I'm going to try and emulate the facial expression here. It's like that. And so it's just the crazy look on his face. I want to see those side by side in the edited version of this video. See how well I did at recreating that. But that's why I had the list of cards up. I was skimming through, and that one stood out above all the others just because of that, the sort of the grimace. I think it's Vaughn again in that case. I think it's actually him as the Borg. It's a flashback to when 7 of 9 had a little mini collective.
Right.
He's one of that's him in Borg form on the forest planet.
So it was a repurposed image of his 2 of 9 character.
Yep.
That's funny.
That's why I love that one.
That's very funny. I took Quantum Slipstream Drive. It's the most prominently, I mean, they talk about Slipstream 5 or 6 more times after that. It's the most prominent technology that existed that they never got to actually use to try and go home.
Yep, it's mentioned in like Think Tank. It's in the episode where the people from the demon worlds of Form and Voyager. Yep. Yeah, and it's a common card, which is yeah, as you say, is strange given how prominent it was in the show.
Yep. And the Dauntless was an interesting ship design, so we get a little bit of a love for the Dauntless in that image as well. So.
And doesn't the Dauntless have download of Quantum Slipstream Drive as well? I think so. Yeah, it's even gets a direct reference for it though.
Yeah.
So my pick for the Borg mirrors what I just said for Voyager. The dilemma here is Replicator Accident. It kills the entire crew and even damages the ship if pulled off successfully. But whenever I tried it, it failed.
It's relatively easy skill-wise to overcome, if I recall.
Yes, it's only engineer physics, and then you need a bunch of cunning. And those are, as you said, relatively common. So usually 5 people surviving or 5 unstopped people going on means they can beat it.
I think the reason I enjoy your videos about making these sort of dilemma combos to wreck, seemingly undefeatable crews is because of all the sort of theory crafting I did as a teenager that turned out to be garbage, where I was convinced I'd found this perfect combination of things and it never worked. That's why I think I actually enjoy knowing that you've broken the back of many of these problems. For Holodeck Adventures, I went with a Captain Proton black and white card. I went with Lonzak because, again, we're talking about characters that appear multiple times, which is something I love, seeing that continuity in these shows. I love the actor who played him. He's hamming it up to a great degree. And so he's got a great expression on his face in that card when you see it up on the screen. So he's just one of my favorites. Yep, I would have loved to have gotten a signed card of that while he was still alive.
I managed to pick one up just recently. So I'm super excited about it. It means that I might be able to fill out my 9 frame in a couple of conventions. I was torn between the Holo Program Fortress of Doom for exactly that reason, and Remember the Alamo, both because I love the model and because it's the only time Molly O'Brien shows up in first edition. She's very faint and in the background and with Keiko, but it's the only time that Hana Hate actually is on a card. So that's what I've gotten Hana to sign when I saw her way back when.
I almost picked the Deadwood Holo Program because HBO's Deadwood is one of my favorite shows of all time, and then to see the sort of vanilla TNG version of it was fun too.
So for this one, I went for Tongo. So Tongo is a Ferengi game, much like Darbo, but whereas Darbo is, as far as we can see on the show, a game of chance, similar to our roulette, I suppose. And in the game, it's also depicted as that. You reveal cards from your own deck. In Tongo, you actually play against your opponent. So it's a mini game within the game. You have to pick one of several options, and you have to place a wager. And as you can imagine, if you can't rely on your opponent's cooperation, that can backfire a lot more than you would hope. And I think whenever I tried that, I didn't even bring it to a tournament. I believe I only played it in test games, but that was enough to keep me from actually building a deck around it properly.
Yeah, there was all the gambling mechanics. So you had like all threes and things like that was sort of mixed into as a theme throughout. But I never saw anyone really excited by them.
I always wanted to build a casino deck where most of the use all the Royale Casino cards as best I could, and do something entertaining with that. But I never managed to pull anything like that together, let alone hear about it doing a very good job at all. So.
And finally, for TMP, I've gone with St. John Talbot, partly because David Warner is an absolute favorite. We obviously see him again in Star Trek VI. We've seen him in a whole different set of franchises. But just the little detail, especially in the card, that in a world where we've solved all of the problems, the film is so bad that it's driven him to smoke as a character on Nimbus 3. So a great card for a great actor.
I couldn't pick one. I got stuck here on 2 again. I absolutely love the I Hate You card, and the whole story of how Kirk Thatcher just sort of schooled Leonard Nimoy on what the punk needed to be, and then just was it, because it was far easier to have him just show up with a tape from his band than it was to actually try and cast someone to play that 30-second role. But I also am, and the Picard cameo, a callback to that was fantastic. But in a more serious but still love it card is Dushak, is Land the Ship. It's a beautiful shot of the bounty on Vulcan, and it's just one of those pictures that is happy and is beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's a great iconic moment, both for the end of 3 and the beginning of 4.
Motion pictures was probably one of the hardest because most of the rares are really good. The artifact is fantastic. The dilemmas are great, mirroring the escalating power level at the time. So apart from the I Just Love Scanning for Life Forms that I believe I've already mentioned last time, the rare of choice would have been Romulan Ambassador Nunculus, but we've mentioned him a couple of times before. So here I actually went for a uncommon card that I've always wanted to make work, and that's transporter drones. So that's an equipment that can participate in battle like a personnel with strength of 8, but you don't compare it to your opponent's strength, but rather to their cunning. And then you can use it to capture people. But it's surprisingly hard to pull off in an actual game. There's a virtual card that makes it easier to place on this mechanic, but still, I haven't found the right deck or the right recipe to make that work.
I always thought there should have been a way around it, whereas you automatically defeat it if you have a Starfleet Type 3 phaser rifle from watching Worf do the swing against it. Would have been a
that
nice
you discard then, right?
Yep. You discard both, whatever it is.
It's always hard for me not to mention George and Gracie in the same context. It's not terribly valuable. It's got to be a pain in the butt to play and make them score. But I love that they made that mechanic. I love that they made the card. I always smile when I see it.
And to have the Citation Institute thing. I don't know if you've been to Monterey, but the first time I went to that aquarium, you can run around and still find all the spots from the movie. And I was pretty excited about it. Forget the fish. I was there for the architecture.
The set tour.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of casino, I like the house 1. We get exactly 5, so no under, no over. I'll be calling the odds for the upcoming sports seasons here.
There is a discussion that happened in the Star Trek CCG Facebook group recently when someone was selling a Farjo collection with the bubble gun still included. And so I was kind of curious as to what 25-year-old product in a sealed Farjo collection might actually be like. And before I say anything else, I want to issue the disclaimer that neither myself nor any of my fellows on this video recommend or suggest or would ever endorse consuming a 25-year-old product directly from the pack, and one you should definitely not do it. Having said that, we're going to try the gun from the 25-year-old pack. After discussion with a few sources I thought might be helpful, I learned that gum has a sell by date, not a use by date, and they're different in terms of the potential changes the product can undergo. Most people think that what I can expect is that the sweetness will have strongly diminished, so it should taste quite bitter. And the most likely texture is far from soft, but very brittle and likely to turn to a kind of powder in my mouth. So here is the interior sleeve. And the gun is in a sealed pack itself. So there's a secondary seal for the pack. It's located behind the 1962 Roger Maris baseball card. The card itself doesn't smell of the gun. It just smells of the plastic that the cards are contained within, which is probably what the gum will taste like in the end of this. So here is the offending icon. It's slightly browner than I remember it from back in the day. This is a slightly more ominous. It's inflexible, shall we say? Yeah, I don't want to snap it, but that's definitely not bendable. Okay, there is a tear corner, so they did build in a mechanism that didn't require you to. Let's see if I can Oh, I've broken it, but it's still fine. This wasn't a good idea to begin with.
Put it up on camera, Tom. We can't see it.
Oh, sorry, it's right here. I'm missing the corner. Yes, I don't want to fracture it more. Oops. Perfect timing there. Here we go. So here is my, nope, it's sticking to the plastic. Hang on. There we go. Okay. It is with its little corner. It does smell like plastic with a hint of bubblegum. I'm going to see how much I can bend it.
Yeah, like a tiny soupçon of any other flavors.
Maybe a little strawberry. It's like 90% plastic. I imagine, remember the food that Worf and Geordi eat on a DS9 when they visit the station. How far can I bend it? Not at all. It just goes. Okay. So let's give it a go. See what this is. So I'm going to do the whole thing. If I'm going to do this, here's all 3 parts in one big. Okay, give me a sec.
Oh, you take as much time as you need.
All right, one. Excuse me. I'm not swallowing that. Holy God. Okay. Okay. First of all, it did instantly powderize, and it never formed any kind of cohesive structure like bubblegum would normally do. It kind of became a mush very, very rapidly. If you want to know what it tastes like, just try licking the inside of the plastic sleeves of the Fajo collection. There was no flavor, oh God, whatsoever, other than plastic in that. All right, it definitely permeated. Hang on.
But that was like a good 30 seconds where you didn't need to chase it.
I was trying. Like, I thought, I'm going to commit. I'm going to do this. But as I continued to chew and didn't form any kind of structure like bubblegum, I thought, I'm not going to actually swallow that. And there's going to be no purpose to doing that in its entirety. So that's an experience I'm glad that I've had, but would never ever repeat. And as soon as this video is done, I'm going to pull chunks of it out of my teeth and try and move on. So,
and when this video is posted, you will post a comment telling us whether or not you get violently ill in the next 24 hours.
Yep. Oh God. It's not. It is just plastic. It's like chewing particles of plastic. There's just nothing else to it. So there was no flavor whatsoever other than plastic in that experience. So not that one couldn't recreate this experience in the future, but I highly doubt it's going to get any better with time. I think the trend I noticed. So for those of you on the forum, I hope this saves you from repeating this ill-advised idea that we 100% do not recommend.
Also, if you need to try this at home, I have several of the bubble gums from previous Fajos that I've opened. Feel free to PM me. This has been a ton of fun.
It's apart from this last moment, it was all really good. We ended on a polythene note for me, but nonetheless, it was a good thing to do. I really enjoyed our chats, and I hope people have found it interesting. I remember your first message when I posted a picture in the forum of one sealed pack of each of the sets, and you were trying to encourage me to be the ones to open them, and I thought it was a great idea. I'm glad it was you instead, because I enjoy having those sealed packs, and it's every now and then I look at them and I get a little sort of urge to maybe sort of peek inside, but I know that once it was done, I would miss having the thing. But at least in this, we got to make a good video out of it and get a lot of opinions and a lot of takes. So it's been really fun to discuss.
And some completely amazing polls.
That was, I'd say overall way above average. You know, even once, I know there was we had a sort of bit of a lull in the middle, but the Jake and Nog, it's pretty spectacular. I mean, it would still be above average even if we ended before we got the bounty in TMP, right? Or even if we ended before holodeck, it would still be the Jake and Nog and the Premiere stuff still make it above average set, I think.
Well, there's no following up that stunt. This is the ends of our scheduled videos for the Star Trek Set Chat and Pack Rack video series. I'm Mike Sember with Tom Target, Haven't Eaten That Gum, Dan Winterhalter, Johannes Klarhauser. Thanks so much, Josh Fry, for all the photos for this video series. And if you're still watching this far, boy, thanks for coming along for the ride.